The biggest cause of male death under 25 is suicide.
Worldwide, I think it's around 700,000 people take their lives,
Wow.
75% of which are men.
The problem is growing and growing. Young men, more and more, do not have role models. Their support system is going down.
The lack of the right role models, or the availability of way too many wrong role models.
They've got the likes of Andrew Tate as well, spreading toxic masculinity.
Men, especially young men, I can see that happening. They just don't know who they should be. And it's difficult because the traditional split of roles does no longer exist. And they don't know how they should treat a woman. They don't know. They have absolutely no idea. Should I open the door for her? Should I not? Should I don't know, help?
And the rules are changing.
And the rules are changing all the time.
Welcome to another episode of Mind Movers. Today, we have another one of my friends. I feel like I take over with friends, but I'm just very lucky to have surrounded myself with people who have impacted my life in a positive way. We know that the conversations are mainly about mental health, and today I've got a really special guest, Artur Zolkiewicz. Did I say it right?
Very good. Well done.
Woohoo! I said it right. So he's actually a name that's synonymous with fitness, wellness, high performance coaching in London. Artur is somebody that really has demonstrated to me the importance of exercise, physical exercise, and also mental exercise in a way that he's harnessed his life to become the person that he is. He's had a really interesting childhood. He works with some incredible people, has done some amazing business ventures. So really happy and excited to talk to him. Welcome, Artur.
Well, thank you for having me.
Great, amazing. So I'm going to start off, right, because I remember that when we first started talking, we discussed martial arts, right? So Tell us a little bit about your childhood. Where did you grow up? How did martial arts come into your childhood? And how is it for you today as well?
So I was born in Poland, 1985, so quite a while ago already.
I'm 1987. Let's just not say that's not old.
I'm not going to mention it.
And I always have been a very active child. So I played a lot of chess because my parents were more into that. They would always push me towards more intellectual pursuits. So it would be more playing chess, reading books, writing. But I was also always very active. So I played a lot of football, a lot of volleyball. So always a lot of activity. And I grew up amongst a lot of boys that would like to get into fights. And I was never really a fighter. So my parents, I think, my dad specifically initially, decided to send me to karate classes when I was, we wanted to when I was 6, but back then, because the training was so tough, you had to be 8. So you had to be 8 to be able to start training. So as soon as I turned almost 8, we cheated a little bit. So when I was still 7, I actually started karate training. And that has set me up for the future it taught me so much, the training, the people, the coaches that I had, the role models that I had there, the competitive side of it, and the discipline, those a lot of that. So to the point, the first year I didn't want to go because there was one coach. He was a very intellectual guy, but also physically very fit, right? So, but he was also very strict. So back then it was just normal. It was 1993, so very normal for a class like this to be very strict. So to give you an example, he would have 120 kids in a dojo. That's what you call the place where you train, and it was only him, and there was no word spoken. It was silent, right? If you came late to the class, you had to sit down on your knees and just wait for him to allow you in. And before you went in, you would have to do push-ups just to punish you for being late. Now, I'm not saying these are the right methods to treat children and 8-year-olds, but what it did, I'm never late now. I'm always on time. I'm always sort of the discipline of coming to place on time or being regular with what I do, and I attribute this exactly to back then because I taught karate myself, I taught martial arts myself. And it's very different nowadays. And again, I'm not saying that was the right way, but there is a middle ground between what's happening now with what was back then, right? And then further down the line, as I said, I would, the first 4 years, I did not miss a single session. And my mom was very happy because 3-4 times a week, I would be out every evening. And out, by being out, I mean when I came back home, I was dead tired and I just go to sleep. So she had it easy with me. And so I competed. Every other weekend I would go for karate seminars, workshops, competitions. I met a lot of friends. I had my first kiss with a girl I met at the karate in a karate competition. So it was a very important part of my life. And up until today, I do a lot of kickboxing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So I do it frequently 3 to 5 times a week.
The question is, right, discipline. I think that's the one thing that massively stuck out for me. And I think that you would agree that dentists harness a group of very disciplined individuals. And on the one hand, would you agree, Payman?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
But I think discipline, I think discipline, we argue a lot on this, by the way, you're going to get used to that. I think you have to be disciplined because you have to get the grades that you need to get into dental school. Once you're in dental school, you need to be disciplined to get through your exams, turn up to clinical things. Right, that's discipline, right? That's all discipline. Sure. You have to also be disciplined, like a lot of red tape is around our career. You have to be disciplined to do your CPD, to do all the paperwork around our stuff. I think that requires more discipline than the average person.
Maybe you're right.
Yeah, see, I won. So I think that that's a really important thing. Now, I don't know actually about the younger generation of dentists. Maybe you know better, but I don't know if that discipline is perhaps less now, because they're so like, I can't be bothered with this. This is causing me stress. And I think that a lot of times we perceive stress to be a bad thing, but like as you said, as a child, it's probably had a positive impact on you. So I don't think that putting yourself through situations where you're expected to turn up and perform is necessarily a bad thing.
Well, I'm interested in what you're saying, Arthur, that, going on from what Rhona's saying, when you say classes today, martial art classes today don't have enough discipline, what is it about them? How is a class today? Because I recognize the one you're talking about, the sort of the dojo, the sensei, the respect, the sort of the hierarchy.
Yeah.
What is it like today in martial arts? And are you saying the same thing in dentistry? Discipline's
Maybe.
gone, but go ahead.
Maybe. Go ahead.
Okay, two separate things. Number one, the stress, the exposure to stress. So there's an actual term called hormesis. So that's a dose of stress that's good for you and is going to make you progress. You can overdose, so then stress becomes a bad thing, right? Yeah. But stress in and of itself, it's not a bad thing, right? Because we're so afraid of it nowadays that we tend to stress about stress. Mm-hmm. So as soon as we lose stress, we stress more, and that's just like a vicious cycle. To your point, to your question, again, I'm generalizing now, but it seems to me that in a lot of the martial arts classes for children, that's what I'm referring to, they're more playful. They're less, discipline. And there comes a point in every child's life, and that was back then the same thing, say 15, 16, when other factors come into play, kids stop doing what makes them grow. So they go, become the other gender or the same gender, whatever you're into, and then alcohol, drugs. So all these things sort of interfere with your progress, whether it's martial arts or whatever else, right? So your passion when you're a teenager, I think, is so important. But nowadays, it's just more. So, for example, if coming to my classes now, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you don't necessarily have to be on time, right? Because there's no punishment. But I still show up on time, and I noticed that with my peers at that club, that when most of the people that did any sort of type of traditional martial art, so where discipline is an actual component that's being taught, they always on time. There's some other people that's more, and it's also very cultural in a way. So, people treat time more loosely. But I think that component is missing. It's kids can do more. They allowed to do more, which is a good thing. But also they're left to themselves otherwise, right? So there's an iPad, there is a phone on the mat. That wasn't the case. And now, my gym recently the one I train in Jiu-Jitsu, they said, okay, no more phones on the mat for anyone, children, adults. And initially I was, my first reaction was, but then actually I did a couple of classes. I was like, this is the best thing they could have done, because you have people interacting with one another, right? So you have people, and we probably will speak about later, but it's a community of people.
Yeah, so key.
Mostly men. There are women as well, more and more, which is amazing. But it's also, speaking specifically of men, it's a safe space where if you speak in the changing room with other guys, they're like, this is my meditation. I come here, I don't see my phone, I can't think about, whatever, spreadsheet or a decision or whatever I have to do. This is where I have to fully focus on what I'm doing, because otherwise you're going to get choked out, right? But you can also, you have that component of aggression, which is important for men. You have the component of camaraderie, friendship, which is also very important. And you have a time away from a screen, a time away from anything else. So that's why, I always tell anyone when it comes to children, send your kid to some sort of a martial art class and just research first, go on and try it out and see if that, because I think that's the best thing that can happen to a child.
I think I hear as well, there's a few key words there. Punishment was one that just came up because you said there's no sense of consequence. And I think that, I think there's like good and bad to having consequences and punishment, because I think, again, when I relate it back to dentistry, the fear of getting in trouble, whether it's with like a governing body or your indemnity, or do you know what I mean? That also keeps us accountable to certain actions and decisions that we make. You're giving me that look again.
The thing is, in dentistry, it's one of the areas where actually you can get away with a hell of a lot.
I disagree.
Without anyone finding out. The difference between a great dentist and a not so great dentist is what he does when no one's watching, which is most of the time. Yeah?
But you just made a great point. That's the difference with anyone who performs on a high level and anyone who sort of is a very average what they do, right?
But I think what I'm saying is, my point is, that you could have someone who keeps up with their CPD, who doesn't get sued because of, he's good, charming, and yet when he does the work, doesn't do it to the highest standard because no one's paying attention to the work. In our career, we know this. The better job you do, the less money you make. Yeah, because if you say this restoration is going to cost you £600, now I can spend real time, magnification, checking everything, or I can not check those things and still get the same £600. And me and you know that compounds, and the thing will fail in 5 years instead of in 12 years, and the patient will have forgotten all about it. So what I'm saying is, one of the aspects of our job, of professionalism that you're alluding to, is what you do when no one's watching.
I hear you, but I think that you're mistaking that actually for like a sense of consciousness. Like, on the one hand,
ethics.
Well, ethics, right? Because I think in anything that you do, like, I think you're confusing the two, because I think, okay, number one, like, if you're a lawyer or you work in finance or you're in this professional jobs, yes, there is a degree of us being like, we can't get in trouble because we will get punished. If we do something wrong and get found out, which is what you're saying, we will get in trouble. So that keeps a lot of people somewhat in check, right? But also the person that's like, I want to do this because I'm genuinely, and this is the way I practice dentistry, care about the person in the chair, and I want to make sure that I'm doing my best for them. And that's the same in kind of anyone that like runs a business. That's just really ethics to me, But I think that a lot of people now, especially with accountability, because they don't have anyone to be accountable for apart from themselves, sometimes that isn't a big enough motivator to keep you going. And that's why people give up much more easily, because, as you said, as a child, turning up on time because someone will tell you off because you're not on time, got you into that habit, and there is that quote that says habit will get you further than motivation can, because that's the thing. And the famous book Atomic Habits, right? I'm sure both of you know it.
I've got an important question for you, Arthur, based on Rhona in dentistry, right? She's a very good dentist, very, very, very top dentist. But for me, her absolute superpower is how she relates to the person. Yeah. Not the teeth, the person. Yeah. What I'm interested in is when you're doing personal training, and you're doing personal training for these high-end, high top-level people, how much of your value add is that mental understanding the person thing, how much of it is technique, nutrition?
What I'm going to say, and I was going to be controversial, but I think for a personal trainer, operating, having clients such as I have, personality is much more important than your knowledge. And obviously you have to have the knowledge, right? Because you have to bring results, etc. But at the end of the day, people spend, if you think about this, right? I have clients who spend 5-6 hours a week with me, and then I see them outside of the hours as well, right? So they spend a whole lot of time with you. Some of these people don't like spending this much time with even anyone, right? So you have to bring something special to the table. I'm not saying I'm special, but value, but also you need to, I think, okay, personality, and by personality I also mean your level of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And I think I have a quite high level of quite high IQ.
And so do you.
Yeah, that's why me and Artur get on so well. Yes. Yeah.
But give us an example of that. So you've got some guy who's a CEO of some company.
Yeah.
And he hasn't got the motivation to come to the gym, or you double his motivation somehow.
I want to interject that Artur actually works with Lulu's, Hertford Street, 5 Hertford Street. Yeah, he's saying as well. So the type of clients, as you know there, are not necessarily like aesthetically driven, just to kind of put in there. So their motivations, which I think is really interesting when we talk about wellness and fitness. So yeah, just for the, for people that don't know.
Okay, so motivation is, again, it's more habit than motivation, right? So one thing, especially for this type of a client, I would say it's your meeting. Your meetings are important to you. This is your meeting with yourself. And you don't even have to say it because, you operate with people who are much smarter than I am. So the level of IQ there is just much higher than mine, right? But it's the ability of not taking the cookie cutter approach in which you understand the human being. So to give an example, right? To understand and that's why that's what I do, I call more performance coaching rather than personal training, because you take care of the full body, and in that body I see the mind as well, right? So it's part of your body in the end. I'm not saying I'm a psychologist, I'm doing anything special, but my interest is in more areas rather than just the aesthetic part of it, right? Because that's easy. You can go to a gym in a few places in London. Their sole business model is to get you fit in 3 months. If you don't follow the rules, they fire you. And pretty much, I know so many people that went there,
and they relapse.
But there's no longevity in it. There's no longevity. They're not happy afterwards, right? And there's a whole bunch of sort of technicalities we could speak about. But, to me, understanding the person and what they like, what they dislike, and also personal training is a service thing. So your service matters as much as your knowledge does. People don't get it. If you work with clients as the type of clients I work with, your general knowledge matters. So you have to read the news, listen to the news. You have to be able to speak about things, right? So, and then you see that there must be some sort of
connection,
communication, right? So there's not one way, do this. These people don't like when I tell them what to do. They don't really like anybody tell them what to do, right? And we still have, but if you make it fun and games, so, for example, I have a client now, very, very close friend as well, has become a very close friend. And as I told you before, a business partner. We play chess in between. So in between his rounds, we play chess. And, it's just something that keeps his mind busy. And, I have someone else who, instead of listening to music, he likes listening to the news or LBC, right? So that's
such a hater station, by the way. LBC, just saying, go on.
It's how you keep the person interested,
engaged.
Some people hate exercise though. They hate it actually, but they still do it, which I admire, right? But so how do you keep people engaged? How do you keep people coming back to you and not anyone else, right? So it's building relationships. I think with the people I have now, I managed, I've been seeing them for 5-6 years. So and they still getting what they want to get out of it. And also keeping it interesting, right? So keeping it so that they don't get bored, because also a lot of playful minds and a lot of people that, have a lot going on in their lives, and understanding stress levels as well. So understanding, okay, the accumulation of stress in you, your work, your family, your business, your whatever it might be, and physical exercise and the mental pressure you're under. you have to understand that level of it as well in order to prescribe the right exercise, right? So as you can see, exercise is only one thing. It's not really, there's with some of my clients I would do. We spoke about it briefly actually, but there is neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
You can actually, there are ways, and that's also on me to go to the right place. I go to the US frequently to conferences just to find out about that stuff. Also because of the other project, but
and I guess also whether he's having a good day or a bad day.
Exactly.
Right? The same person could be different on different days.
And also, you never take things personally. You know these people, and sometimes, initially when you
I'm
start
a nightmare in my coach, just saying, in my personal training session. Huh?
Are you?
Yeah, you're looking at me like I knew that,
No.
I am just because I'm on my phone as well, like checking emails in between. I'm not very present.
Oh.
Anyway, it's tough life.
I'll probably tell you off for this.
Yeah,
But you're not her personal coach, are you?
No.
No.
I told him to give me a training session. Still waiting for that.
I
But
told
go
you
on.
to come.
Okay, go on.
No, but I think there is, and that's why I'm the personal training you perceive is sort of the what's seen on social media. So solely the physical part of it, right?
Yeah.
So we train, we get abs, and that's it. But think about dentistry. Okay, let's take dentistry.
Yeah.
What if you were only doing the whatever, so that people look good, but the health is not there?
Yeah. There's a lot of that.
But there is a lot of that. And interestingly,
That's what I'm saying. But that's
what it would be like.
Interestingly, because Payman knows, there was when Facebook was a thing like 10 years ago, there was this like fitness dentist gym group, right? And you'll be surprised there are dentists that are really obsessed with the aesthetic, and I'm talking about like you're like, are you on steroids? That sort of look, like super bulked, super lean, and you're thinking to yourself, and again, it's quite common. I do think it's because of the personality types of dentists, the way they put pressure, the perfectionism, etc. But like you said, like, are you healthy? And I think that leads me on to my like next questions. Like there's constantly like these fads that you see online and all these things, and I think that the perception that if you're not ripped you're not healthy is really toxic and dangerous, because as you said, having a very low body fat percentage for a woman, for example, is actually really, really bad. Like, you're compromising your fertility, and movement in itself is good for you, and you don't have to be ripped to do that. So how do you like maximize your performance and also help change the narrative that like being this physique is not necessarily the healthiest way to be? And by the way, there's still a lot of young dentists that aspire to be that kind of like ripped look, which I'm like, no, this is just
But there's this, and there's also that if you're lean you're not healthy. So I disagree with both. Mm-hmm. So if you lean you're healthy, that's one group of people think, it must be super healthy. But if you lean you're unhealthy, it's just the other type of narrative we're saying now, right? One thing, okay, a few things. Mm-hmm. I don't even know how many things, but we'll get there.
We won't count.
So number one, fitness and health and wellness is a marathon, not a sprint. Mm-hmm. So you don't get there in 3 months, right? So you don't, I get accused sometimes, I'm in a good shape. I get accused sometimes people, so what are you taking? Like, what's that? Like, are you in testosterone? No, but I have been doing this constantly since I started lifting weights when I was 20, started training when I was 7, right?
Yeah.
So it's the marathon that habits, exactly. And you just simply cannot get there in 3 months or a year, right? You have to, and that's purely aesthetics. Obviously, I got into lifting weights because of aesthetics, because I went to a modeling agency. They were like, you don't have, my performance was amazing because I was competing in martial arts, winning competitions. But I got to the modeling agency. They were like, "Oh, you don't have abs, so we don't want you, because for your type you have to." So then I was like, "Okay, I have to start lifting weights," and that's what got me into it, right? And I'm not going to. But then once you understand the impact of physical activity on all other areas of your life, right? Your confidence levels, your mental health as well, which we're going to speak to. There's a meta review of studies, which meaning over 128,000 participants overall. The results were that the conclusion was that physical exercise, so I think high intensity to sort of moderate intensity, was as effective, if not more effective, than counseling and medication for anxiety and depression. Mm-hmm. So if you think about the impact of just physical exercise, going to the gym regularly, whatever you do there, right? And then this impact on your relationships with people, your mental health, your relationship with yourself. There's just such a huge impact. So my point being that once it's all good that people want to look good, that there's nothing wrong about this, right? That doesn't mean that they will be healthy if they get there because of the way they get there, right? But there's just, once you realize how many benefits it has for you and your family, your friends, the people that you surround yourself with, then you probably understand the importance of it. Number two is there's this concept of backcasting. It's Dr. Peter Attia, one of the top people in the...
He's like a longevity
person.
Yeah, he's sort of the most prominent doctor, at least on the social media front or online longevity. He's a super smart guy, has a podcast as well, and anyway, he's got this concept of backcasting. So essentially, what he says, in terms of physical health, where do you want to be in the last 10 years of your life, right? So assume you know what, 30 something, right? Let's not disclose here. We're like 38, right? Assume I will live, I don't know, 100 years.
That's punchy.
Being optimistic here. But between 90 and 100, what physical ability do I want to have, right? So I probably want to be able to get up. I probably want to be able to go to the shop, which probably is not going to happen in 60 years, but whatever. So I want to be able to the things that are a daily living activities, and you don't want other people to have to help you. Maybe I have grandkids and maybe I want to play with them, right? So in order to achieve that, what do you have to start putting in place now in order to be there in 6 years' time? And that puts fitness in a much, much different environment and context, because then it's a health context. It's not getting ready for my wedding, getting ready for the next Spain trip or whatever, right? So not many people respond well to it because people don't want to think about it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like, whatever, we'll figure it out. But some pill is going to come about. But this is also the way of putting fitness and performance into a context that's more important than just the chiseled physique that you're referring to. And health, to your question, sorry, I digress, but being in a good shape doesn't mean you're healthy. Being in a good shape doesn't mean you're unhealthy. It just depends how you got there, and it depends on many other factors, such as your recovery, your diet, your mental state, and etc. So there's
a few things there, because first of all, I think, and obviously I'd like to get your view on it, but I think number one, there's immense pressure for people to exercise, especially when they are depressed, because there's also a group of people, and I'm sure we've all been there, that you have days where you're like, I'm actually paralyzed with how I feel mentally. The last thing I want to do is pick myself up and go to a gym. Often because of habits, even if when I don't feel like it, I might even go to the gym for like 15 minutes and be like, I'm not feeling it today. But even like the act of going, but I know that I'm in a privileged position because some people are not. And, we talk about our bubble, right? The bubble that we live in, because there are some people that have like 7 children to feed and like are on benefits and live like a really stressful life, and they're not like, I'm going to go to the gym because everyone says it's good for me, and they are suffering from all of the sort of awful things that obesity imposes. So I think that, there is that challenge and difficulty, and it's all very well saying exercise, don't take antidepressants, but I think that, there's much bigger mental challenge to even just get up and go to the gym for some people.
Again, just to clarify, I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that people shouldn't, but what I'm saying is that it's as good, or if not
as effective,
right? So, but I understand this, and I was fortunate enough that I've been doing it for such a long time for myself. I'm speaking subjectively now, that my parents got me to do it, and I was an active child, and that was my and there's a difference between siblings. There's different the differences depending on what they do when they, and it is really that's why childhood has, in terms of your physicality, it has such a huge impact on who you've become later in life, I think.
Totally.
As a person.
And I think as well, I mean, I don't know, you've got kids, right? Do you not sometimes think like, I need to keep my health in check because I want to be around for them? Like the priority is child.
Yeah,
do you see what I mean? And so if you have a bit of a health scare.
I'm quite interested in this question though. I know people who, if they don't do exercise for a couple of days, they become a mess. and I can't complain. It's a bit like sleep, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
if you get 8 hours sleep every night, then one day you get 6 hours sleep. That day you're going to feel terrible.
Yeah,
but
I
if you
think
get
it's
6 hours sleep every night,
it's this anxiety. I know what you mean. It's a process, I would say.
Yeah.
I used to be, stressy about, I didn't work out today, so what's gonna happen now? It's just I'm about to die and I'm depressed. Obviously, I wasn't, but it's a process of learning that it's okay, and it's also one bad day is not gonna. It's not a year. It's not a month. It's not a week. It's just one bad day. And it doesn't have to be a bad day. And sometimes it's okay to say, listen, I don't feel like it. I don't want to, I don't want to. Sometimes it's okay to do. And I think there's a lot of, especially with like tracking devices, for example,
yeah,
that you can track so much stuff, they can always almost get overwhelmed with data. So I have some clients that wear the tracking devices. I don't have them checking the data. I check the data. They don't see them because I know with their personality, once they see it.
I used to hate it. But even like, those machines that like do like the body fat and all that stuff, I used to just have such a big cry because I was like, I'm a failure. This is terrible. I'm technically obese. What am I going to do? Do you know what I mean? And like, I had a coach that was like obsessed with the tracker, and I just found it really mentally like.
But see,
bad.
that's why you have to, that's why it's a personal training should be a highly personalized service. In a way that you understand the client and you work with what they like, what dislike. Obviously, there is always some sort of room for negotiation where you're, okay, you probably need that, but maybe we do it in a way that you don't see that we're doing it. So, the brain training that I mentioned to you before, I have some people doing it and they have absolutely zero clue they're doing it. But because I think they need it, because they're a certain age or, whatever, I'm doing it with them. So they don't have to know about this, but it's the way how you communicate with people. So as a trainer, as a coach, how do you get people to do you think is good for them and you program for them, but they won't want to do it. So it's always all about communication, understand that other person, right? And the data, or if you don't go to the gym, you feel you feel guilty or you're a mess. Two sides of it though. One is I know that when I exercise or train, I feel much better. So if I have an issue, have a problem, this is my time to switch off. And I obviously, I still need to take care of the right sleep and recovery and other recovery components because that physically it's not a recovery protocol. But mentally, it makes me feel so much better. Whatever's happening in my life, is a breakup. There's plenty of jokes. But if there is anything with business, family, health, always that, the 2 hours of physical activity between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. in the evenings, it's a sacred time. And, for me, and I said it doesn't matter how big my business grows, this is going to be my thing. And, I have been very busy because I'm trying to build stuff. But everyone involved knows that this is something Artur does every day, right? So it doesn't have to be, by the way, it doesn't have to be intense exercise, but some sort of movement and some sort of, thing that allows me to process as well. So I have, and so many times when it comes to building my startup or working on projects, consulting people on projects, I had my best ideas training. Or under the shower, but that's different. But
the thing you said about some people have 6 kids and can't get to the gym or whatever, it's kind of an easy way out. Like
it's not an easy way out because we have a.
Hear me out. I spent years. I had a startup as well. Yeah. I spent years convincing myself I haven't got time. Yeah. To
go to the gym.
Yeah.
But this is different. Go on.
Hear me out. It turned out to be bullshit excuse, yeah? Because one day I realized at the time Clinton was the president, Clinton was going, like, running, yeah? He's running the whole free world. He's got time. And yet I'm starting a teeth whitening company and I haven't got time. And you know what I mean?
Priorities, I get it.
It's just...
I get it. But you're talking from a place of privilege. I'm the problem I'm talking...
Clinton?
No, you, as in Clinton and you. But a place of
Me and Bill.
No, but it's like,
Trudeau's my real problem.
what I'm trying to
Trudeau's younger than me.
So,
He's running
listen,
Canada. It just pisses me off.
So the thing is that he keeps going on about Trudeau, by the way. I don't know what the whole thing is with Trudeau. Basically, the thing that I'm trying to say is that we're talking about a socio-economic problem is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And those people in society, that sect of society that don't have the privileges, and by the way, I mean a basic privilege.
But okay, he's helping some of the richest people in the world.
Totally.
Yeah? You're treating some of the richest people in the world. The dental pain of a rich person is just as much as the dental pain of a poor
100%.
person. But okay, there's some sort of cumulative effects of not being able to afford and so on. But you know, this my point it's a universal.
Yeah, I think it's a different problem, but it's essentially the same problem. It's a lack of time.
Yeah.
But it's also that mental capacity.
Educational part of it, right?
Yeah.
And also what you're used to doing, what you're not used to doing. Because I would argue for someone who has got billions in the bank and they are not used to. Sorry, someone's calling me. They're not used to exercising. It's going to be as difficult to get into the gym, or whatever exercise is going to be, as that person you're referring to with 6 kids, right? Because on the brain doesn't recognize money. It's like it's just it's a lack of time. So I get your point, but your point.
Go on.
I get it.
Now I'm being told. Go on.
No. I get where you're coming from, and I agree with it, right? Because it's much harder for someone who struggles with financial problems and potentially time problems and lots of other problems because they don't have money to throw money at the problem, right? Yeah. So
they can't buy their way out of
they can't. Yeah. So someone who's wealthy, they're like, oh, I'm just gonna hire Artur. Fine,
totally
taken care of.
But
so I agree with you, but I also agree with you.
Totally.
Very diplomatic.
And it's very interesting as well because when I do a lot of work in the refugee camps. I go every year to Greece to do work with the refugees. This year I brought one of my best friends, Chrissy Chella, who is a really well-known fitness influencer, entrepreneur. And because obviously part of it was like we have a skill, like we're really lucky as medical professionals. We literally treat pain, when we go out there, and that's amazing. That's what I love about my job. And so with Chrissy, what she did was that we found her like the women's wellness center within the refugee camp, and she did a fitness class.
That's amazing.
And it was so great. And we like recorded it, and it was so fantastic to see like these women and getting involved. And like some of them were like dying at like 3 squats because they just never done it. But there was a real sense of community, and that's where I'm going on to kind of like the next subject, which I think is really important and something that is really close to my heart. Payman and I have often discussed that the biggest cause of male death under 25 is male suicide. And I think, the problem is growing and growing. And we often talk about the unfairness within society when it comes to women. And of course that exists. I'm very much at the forefront of that. But men, boys in particular, you guys saw the accident in Croydon, right,
yeah,
with that young boy, right? And what it screams to me is that young men more and more do not have role models. They are their support system is going down. They've got the likes of Andrew Tate as well, who is the person that they look up to, who is spreading toxic masculinity and all that thing. But I want to know your views, because one thing that you said was that there was a real sense of community, and I noticed that you were talking about, previously as well when you played sports, like there was male-only groups and things like that. And I think, again, that's another challenging conversation, because people are, why should it only be male and why should it only be female and everything is the same and we're all equal and all that kind of thing. But I'd really love to know your views, and as well when it comes to like male sport, like is it important to have like sexes working together against each other? What kind of community? How could we do better for younger males?
Okay, so broad topic. I actually looked the numbers up last night, and in the UK 115 people a week take their lives. Wow. 75% of which are men, which actually blew my mind. I was just sitting 75. There like, yes. So, and annually, I think it's worldwide. That's 6,000 people a year, right? 75% from which are men. And then worldwide, I think it's around 700,000 people. 700,000 people who decide, I don't want to live anymore. That's just, it's actually, it's very scary. When it comes to men, I think what you mentioned earlier, the lack of the right role models, or the availability of way too many wrong role models, and everyone getting a voice nowadays, and everyone, without the sense of consequence and without the sense of potential punishment, they can voice their opinions, however controversial they are. And then we have people like Andrew Tate spreading, whatever he has been spreading. And it's funny because he's getting so much publicity even from us, and we dislike him. That's just a phenomenon on the
There's these kind of people
on the media nowadays, right? And you have a lot of young men and even women I speak with. They're like, "Oh, I agree with some of what he says." I'm like, how can you agree with some of what he says, but he also, on the other hand, is just the most sexist and chauvinistic, and it blows my mind.
Listen, on that subject, one of my kids' friends sent me a Andrew Tate thing.
How old is he?
18.
That's the group.
But I listened. It was 3 hours. I listened to him. In that 3 hours, he didn't say anything.
Yeah.
But you don't understand. He's changing the narrative now because his recent accusations, it
wasn't a new thing. But what my point is, there's definitely stuff he says that I wasn't.
True. Okay.
I wasn't massively into it, but so I could have been, or someone else could have been, and he didn't say a single thing in that 3 hours that was.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, listen. I don't listen.
We've all listened to the 30-second things, yeah, and we all know those are the ones that trended, and I'm not saying anything. I mean, the name Andrew Tate is now linked to those, yeah. But there's plenty of people who've listened to the long.
I think we should be taking care of boys. We should be taking 100%. Care of not only boys but children in general, right? So we should be giving them enough education and understanding of what it is to how and it's difficult because the traditional split of roles does no longer exist, which means that men used to know how to behave. Now we don't know how to behave anymore because there's so many suggestions. You should be this, you should be that, you should be this, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. So you sort of feel like, unless you have a strong personality and you stay strong with your values and aligned with them, and then you know who you are. But otherwise, a lot of men, especially young men, I can see that happening. They just don't know who they should be. And they don't know how they should treat a woman. They don't know. They have absolutely no idea. Should I open the door for her? Should I not? Should I don't know, help?
And the rules are changing.
And the rules are changing all the time.
But what do you think? Like, how can we do better? Like, isn't like, what kind of role models do they need? And also, I'm going to go back to the whole community thing that I asked you. In terms, especially when it comes to like male sport and things like that. Are those things that help harness? I know that before we've had conversations where you were like, jiu-jitsu helps me get like in touch with my masculinity, in a different way,
But jiu-jitsu is so martial arts in general are an interesting one because everyone is tough there. Like you are able to go on the mat and choke other people. They choke you. Obviously it's not, but it's a dangerous sport. But then so that toughness is no longer needed because everyone knows you're tough. But it's a community of people. Maybe we don't talk about everything, but you make friends, which then makes you talk to them about the topics that maybe you wouldn't mention with other people. So you have male friends, and male friendships are, and I'm talking specifically on male, but they're also. We also have ladies only classes. Then we have mixed classes. It's a community where there's a boundary that's taken away. So there's a certain societal limit, I would say, that just doesn't exist there because you sweat together, you fight together, and then you laugh together and you have events together, right? Mm-hmm. And that's one specific community I'm talking about here. In my karate days when I was a child, for me that was everything. I would spend weekends with these people, and I would, as I told you, like the first girlfriend I had was from karate. It's friendships that stayed for life, friendships that I have up until today, and people that because they were, and I'm not saying I'm talking specifically about sport just because that's my thing. But I think there's more you can do that creates and teaches people how to have certain values, right? Mm-hmm. And the values are freaking boring. It's the problem we have nowadays. Everything needs to be exciting, right? It's the paradox of choice. There's this really good book called The Paradox of Choice by Barry Schwartz, and what he says, the more choice we have, the less happy we are, and that's true. The more choice we have.
So true, but this is why we're all unhappy.
But listen, and then you have these two types of people. I told you about it before, but you have satisfiers, right? So people that make a choice, they're happy with it. They're like, fine, I bought this coffee, perfect. Then you have people who are maximizers. They're like, I bought this coffee. You see a coffee shop, that would have been better, right?
That's me.
That's me as well. In a lot of, but I think
that's me too. Jesus, we're all doomed.
my theory is, but if you think of romantic partners nowadays in social media, I mean we're opening a whole another Pandora can, but it's the Pandora box. But you are always presented with choice. That's potentially a better choice, right? So same with, say, if you relate it to fitness is boring. You have to do the same thing over and over again, change it up slightly, but you have to be consistent, you have to show up, and you have to keep doing this. People don't want to do it. People don't want to see it, right? So and that social media part comes in, and you have people people bashing other people for saying stuff. Number one, that's a trend now where you sort of criticize everyone, everything, and they just build that algorithm because of that. I'm not saying that's a wrong thing, bad thing, do whatever you want, but it creates that sort of, what there is, the communication it's not a conversation, it's shouting and hoping that people listen, and there's a lot of people listening.
And self-censorship, we talked about this many times, right?
Yeah.
If you're thinking something, you can't say it because you're worried about
cancel culture. We've talked about this, but I've got a question for both of you.
Yeah.
Do you think it is important for men or young boys to still have a safe space, to have a community which is only men? Do you see what I mean? Because now it's so frowned upon.
What is frowned upon?
I think Artur might agree with me. Maybe it's because we're at the forefront of social media, but anything that doesn't include women, everything they do, it's like you're misogynistic, you're non-inclusive. This is it. Do you see what I mean? And I see sometimes that stuff going on in dentistry as well. Look, I've called out, by the way, because there's been certain, I'll never forget it. And actually, do you know the story about me, Chris Coachman? Did I ever tell you the story?
No.
So Chris Coachman is an amazing dentist within our field, a really good friend of mine. And he was part of this thing, 6 years ago called Dental Stars on Instagram or something. And it was him and 4 other men. And they were really promoting it. And I sent the course organizer or whatever, message. And I said, this is really great. Topics are really interesting. I'm really sad to see that you don't have any females on the panel, because it was just one of those things. Apparently, the message I sent was then screenshot in the group and then just being ha sort of thing. And Chris Coachman stepped in and he was like, I know Rhona and she has absolutely a point. He was like, maybe we can consider a female later on. He was like, no, you're going to bring her on right now to the board because we need those female voices. And then I was the only female on that. And I think a lot of people were shocked, but I was like, well, you don't ask, you don't get, number one. Number two, I thought that in that instance, it was important. But now I think about it as well, and I think about the way, as I told you, young men are, do they not have a safe space to be in? And also, what does that look like? Because I think that, there's also, toxic masculinity, as you said. Men commit suicide because, they've got emotions going on. They feel there's no way out. But then if you talk about your emotions too much as a man, you're too soft. So where is it? Do you see what I mean? Where is that sort of, safe space?
First and foremost, for good friends, good friends. You should have female friends, male friends, but good friends are so important to men. So important, and whether or not a club has enough women in it, we can talk about. There's been plenty of research that says diversity makes the strongest club, right? But Men like to be around men, just as women like to be. It's quite funny though, Lebanese dinner parties, are very civilized affairs. Men and women will come in together and they kind of stay together. Iranian dinner parties, immediately at the handing over of your coat, the men go to one side, the women go to the other side, and that's the way we like it.
Yeah.
It's certainly men together will have conversations that.
Yeah, I think it depends what we were talking about. I think I agree with diversity always. It will always go first. But I think for men, it's important to have someone as and that it doesn't have to be a large number, but someone else who can relate to their problems. And obviously, and I hope it doesn't sound controversial now, but men and women are different.
Totally.
And we have we have various views, right?
Cancelled.
Amazing that's controversial. I don't like sport, like watching sport very much, right?
Yeah.
So, but I've been to the odd football game. Yeah.
Yeah, because
I end up watching the crowd more than the game, because the crowd is just so amazing. It's so interesting
to see like that human kind of like
tribalism of it.
There's research that actually men who watch football, their testosterone levels.
Yeah. If they win,
right? Yeah. No, but Jenny, because essentially for testosterone to be secreted, you need components like aggression and physical activity. So if you think of a martial arts, amazing. That's just the best thing you can do, right? But to your point, Rhona, I think it depends what we're talking about. In terms of friendships, friend groups, agree 100%. It's important to have friends of both sexes. Important to have time with your male friends and male only. And because I think it's and also it's important to have different friends, right? So people that you can talk to about anything, right? And then people who have same passions and same hobbies and same, do the same thing, because you can connect over something. And this is important. I think the lack of passion is what leads to people having problems, because they don't know how to channel it. And whether that's a good way of coping with it or not, I don't know. I'm not a mental health specialist. But, for me, for example, I know that, as I mentioned earlier, that my way of dealing with whatever is going on here is through movement, right? And also talking to people. I'm very fortunate to have a very close relationship with my parents, have some very close friends who, I'm not, my sister as well, we can talk about anything. So I'm very fortunate in that regard, right? Maybe also because of my upbringing, maybe because my parents were slightly different, maybe, I don't know. But I think coming back to your point earlier, you could ask the same question about, girls only and boys only schools, good or bad? Because that's where it starts.
I went to a girls only.
I went to a boys only, but then I insisted on my kids going to a mixed.
And? Do you think it's made a difference?
Yeah, they
I don't have a problem with it. I think it kept me focused on like exams and stuff. Also, I think that this is controversial, but also I think that it was really good because I wanted to. As a young girl, you don't really know what's going on. And I think especially when you make decisions about like getting physical with guys and stuff, I felt like it kept me on the like good path, if that makes sense. Because there were no temptations, and like I developed like a real sense of like understanding boundaries and things like that. Controversial, I know.
What about like sisterhood? Did you get that? Because in boys only schools, you get this friend camaraderie thing. Whereas when I look at my daughter, the girls are just so horrible to each other.
They are horrible. I still get it.
Horrible to
I
each
still
other.
get it. But this is the thing, like...
Was there sisterhood also? Or were you like
I
a
think,
lone wolf in this
listen,
school?
not at all. I've always been in sort of like the it crowd, like as in like the popular crowd, surprise, surprise. But I've also felt that within that crowd...
There's a hierarchy. Right?
No, that I'm also really different, as in like there's parts of me, because I'm a very complex person, despite what people see. Shut up. That there's parts of me that don't necessarily like resonate, and girls around me since I was at school have always been competitive. There's always been a fight for boys, but again, this goes back, and I think like I see this still all the time in society, and I'm really interested now. I'm going to digress a little bit on like the primal instinct. I was listening to the amazing podcast with Dr. Tara Swart. Did you see it? And Stephen Bartlett. So she's a neuroscientist. I think I sent Artur, which I'm going to ask him some stuff. And she talks about loads of different elements of society. So as you probably know, women, when they spend a lot of time together, their menstrual cycles sync. Yeah. And the question was asked, who determines who syncs with who? And it's actually the one that's the strongest in the tribe. Now I come into work and I'm like, so am I the strongest?
What defines the strength? Then what's the definition of strength?
I guess it's like the strongest genes. Like this is what she was saying. Does it matter? No, is what she was really saying. But anyways, that's the thing that determines it. And it's saying that those kind of like, there's certain elements that sync. Also, back in the day, like primal days as well, men, this is really interesting, the strongest man had to spread the seed. So he'd impregnate 5 women at a time, and then he'd have to go out and find food or whatever. And the reason why he'd do 5 at a time is because there might be a chance only 1 or 2 would survive. Does that make sense? So like, there is this really innate
Have you read
sense.
Sex at Dawn?
No, I'd love to read it. Is it good? Does it
Yeah.
cover this stuff?
Yeah, well, it's a sex at the dawn of humanity. So,
Yeah.
So what did the
Yeah.
cavemen do
So
for sex?
I think it's really interesting. I'll let you know how I go on that. But I think it's interesting because we've moved on from like primal stages right now, because as we know, like, we could be attracted to someone on the primal level. Again, studies have shown that like women from the primal will go for a man with like a T-shaped physique, right? Because it's that strength of sense and protection. Men on a subconscious level will like women with like a waist-hip ratio because it's like childbearing instincts. They can carry a child, you know. P.S. One of my friends dumped a girl because he thought her bones weren't big enough, so she couldn't carry his children. Did you know that? So anyways, I digress again there. But the point is, right, I think that there's been a confusion.
Not only because of that.
That was one of the reasons. He was like, apparently her bones were too little, so that was like, he just thought she couldn't carry his children. Anyway, whatever.
Did he make it up for himself?
Huh?
Did he make that up for himself?
I think so, but he's quite like old school like that. He's definitely about like the DNA sort of vibe.
Okay. But
Yeah.
I think let's not discuss.
Yeah, okay, let's not discuss. This is another conversation. Anyway, the point is, when now I think also there's a challenge with mental health, which I want to come on to with you, because we're not in a primal state anymore. Like, you might fancy someone because of the way that they look, as in on those like physiques. If they don't stimulate you, or if they can't provide for you emotionally, or if there's so many other elements now which contribute to our survival. Does that make sense? Which I think, maybe you disagree, which I think is also impacting men and women as a whole, right? Because we're becoming so much more complex. And do men feel that because there was such an onus on those like primal features that now they're a bit lost? Do you see what I mean? And then how can exercise support them? Because you said at the beginning, quite rightly, it shouldn't just be about physique, right? But perhaps that was such a big motivating factor because they knew that's what attracted women, being more muscular and broad. Does that make sense? You know,
Yeah.
but we're saying now it's actually to kind of like stabilize you, make you feel good, etc. But how would you say, you know, to young men, like, this is why you should be exercising and this is the goals that you should achieve?
Good question. I think it's tricky because if you think about young men, I don't know sure what we define here as young men, right? Say 18 to 25 or...
Yeah, I mean,
something
I'd
like
say
that.
even younger, maybe like 13 to 25.
Okay. It's initially nowadays, because of what's going on, every single boy is going to go into exercise either because they do a sport and they want to perform really well, but there's going to be some type of an aesthetic goal that's there, right? So they will want to have abs, they will want to have that physique because they are still hormonally growing, right? Someone sent it to me. I'm 38, and they say, "Oh, men are mature when they're 43." I'm like, "Okay, I said 5 years, right?" But
Really? That's so
I don't know. It's I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true.
What about women?
There was a friend. I don't know. I don't know.
I'm still a child and
I didn't look
I'm
it
a
up.
nightmare. Go on, yeah.
But you know, it's so you have to take and it's okay but you just have to show them the right way to get there, and you have to teach. Again, I think people should be taught consistency, because consistency in any level of performance, you can be good at it just by doing it usually for a long time, or just learning how to do it very well, right? And it's no different with fitness, physique wise now, right? But also if you think about the human body, it's the brain is part of your body, right? So your heart is part of your body. And these are quite vital parts that will keep you alive for a very long time. It'll keep you attractive to people if we refer to that. But it's a super important part to get you to get you where you want to be, right? Whether that's physical and mental level. So it's hard to speak with people because, and you can tell, you know, whenever I see someone new and people ask me, and interestingly, actually today, I would digress a little bit, but speaking of kickboxing and jiu-jitsu, which I do now, there's one of the, like really young boys, like he's 18, and he sees that I'm building a business, I'm doing this and that, you know, on social media. He reached out to me. He was like, "Hey, can I ask you some questions? Because, I'm just starting out, I'm young, and I don't know what I'm doing. I really want to do well. I'm like, man, I'm taking you out for lunch. I'll give you whatever time you need. Because this is so brave of him to be like, listen,
I want to do what you're doing.
I want to maybe, but also I want to listen to people and find out how can I be better, right? Whatever he wants to do. But I'm so up for this because, I have been supported by various people. And I think whatever support you can give, you should be given the support, especially, if you think that someone needs that support or they have the potential, whatever that might be. But I think it's always a very subjective and personalized conversation that should happen because people react differently they have different motivators, right? So so it's really hard to answer this question actually. So generally speaking.
Yeah.
I think what you said is interesting because of T-shaped body is what you're saying. It's sort of your program to be into, but
primarily, apparently.
But then now we're getting confused with other things you're saying, sort of thing. Right?
Well, no, it's not that. But I think survival then was completely different to survival now, is what I see. Because as you know, there are women that are they value more security and safety, financial
T-shaped
support.
wallet.
Lol. So
I get it.
Good business idea.
Yeah. And also for men, you'll find plenty of men that don't necessarily like women that have hips. Do you know what I mean, or whatever it is?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different elements.
I think you know what, Rhona. I think it's still that's the attraction part, the physical attraction part. It's still going to be quite primal, I think.
But this is the thing, according to this podcast, the primal was very much, as I said, so women with small waist hip ratio, men are going to be she can carry children, do you know what I mean, that kind of thing on that very primal level. But it's super interesting. But I would argue and say that now it's changed, right? Because you might find men that like super skinny straight girls, do you know what I mean? He's like me.
No, but listen,
Iranians, they love their Eastern Europeans.
I think it's very, very it's a general statement. I think that the sort of primal instincts will still have an impact as to who we are attracted to, right? Whether or not you have a type or whatever. And there, you probably could go very Freudian here and discuss a lot, right?
Mum will come into
it.
And I'm interested. You've got you're clearly mentally quite nuanced, right? You're thinking deeply. You're when we spoke before we started, you're definitely an entrepreneur. So, you could call me an entrepreneur, but I don't think I'm wired that way. But listening to your story from Poland to Austria to the businesses you started and the businesses you're starting now, I feel like you're definitely an entrepreneur. And how these things have now, it's possible now to be in the fitness space and someone who's intelligent, whereas back in the day,
you definitely have a Johnny Bravo effect. Sorry, my parents
back
were
in the day,
definitely
there was a jock, right?
It's a jock.
And there was a scientist.
You have that stereotype. You do have that stereotype, and I think that as I said, it's really important because people think you couldn't be one or another, and I think people still have that stereotype. And if they see someone also that's physically in really good shape, he's a personal trainer, so he's time to just be in the gym all
listen,
day.
I always experiment with it and I enjoy it actually. I used to get very insecure about this, right?
Really?
By the way, because also I moved here, I didn't.
Yeah.
I lived all over the world, modeling. I was a journalist for a while and writing, so I have absolutely no issue talking to people. I can go and talk to anyone. I can travel by myself. I will always find new people that eventually become friends, right? But what I do now sometimes, there is a lot more strings to my bow. But what I always when people ask me what I do, I'm a personal trainer. But the reaction of that person, you kind of can see, okay, we're not going to get along because they disregard you straight away, especially in certain, certain
cultures.
I have to say, because my parents are amazing. They would love you and get on with you really well. But obviously there's my mum definitely being Lebanese, you know what I mean? And like, even like my dad, when my sister loved art, he was like, to be an artist for what? You know what I mean? You want to be poor, you know? But I think that's a cultural thing. They don't get it.
They'd want a PhD in it.
Yeah.
Oh, listen,
Yeah.
I get, no, but I'm probably going to get smashed for this, right? But I got so much, I don't know, people, there's so many assumptions based upon the way I look. You know, I have been a model, and I'm, you know, probably quite a good-looking guy, judging by, I made money from it, so, you know, there must be something to it. But the amount of times that people judge me as a guy just based upon my looks,
Same with me,
and
all the time.
appearance, all the time. And you know, if you think about it, like, and that makes me understand women a little bit more, because that sounds funny now, but it's. And I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this as well.
Cancelled.
But it sucks. It sucks to be judged upon
100%
based upon who you look.
Yeah.
And because, you know, you have that's that, and you know, this is why I like talking to people and getting to know people better, because I believe there's so much more to
Depth.
me, and I, you know, I'm interested in so much stuff, and you know, I university degree, etc. You know, started a second one, whatever. But that's not. You shouldn't have to, and that's never going to be the case. But you shouldn't have to prove people, oh, I'm not that stupid, right? So I'm not stupid. I'm not as stupid as I look.
I was guilty of that, siloing people into physical and mental.
Yeah.
And the point you made about the mental being the physical, you know, absolutely right.
You did it to me.
No, all the
You did.
all the way until Joe Rogan was the one that made me realize, wow, like he's a super clever guy. He's a super physical guy. You know, like
you're making a great point, because this is the role model boys should have, right? In terms of men, that they should understand that physicality, you know, and the mental strength and the intelligence, they have to they should go together, really, because there's no, you know, there's is it, I think, from I'm gonna quote now from Conan the Barbarian. I think he says, this is a task for men with skinny arms, for old men with skinny arms. So that's sort of the separation between I'm so strong, I'm gonna kill everyone, and sleep with a woman, but you make the important decisions. But that's just not the case. It's just there is a way of connecting, being in good health, being in a good shape as well, and being interested in a lot of things that would normally be assigned to someone who's more intelligent, more smart, more academic, and more, you know. But it doesn't. It's not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
It can go together. It can go hand in hand.
I think also, like, for me, as I said, like, we're failing a whole generation of young men, and it's not being talked about enough because we focus so much on other things, and people don't recognize how pertinent it is when it comes to like male mental health. But as you said, there is a balance, because there are good role models. We've spoken about it before. I absolutely love Huberman. Do you listen to Huberman? I absolutely love Lex Friedman. Lex Friedman is a little bit more of the archetypal like geek in a way, isn't he? Because he's like an academic. He doesn't but he's really sexy.
No. In fact, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's actually a vicious.
But he doesn't like, the thing for me, as I said, I don't want to give Andrew Tate any more airtime, but he represents the archetypal Johnny Bravo, which I personally don't find attractive. Do you see what I mean? Whereas like someone like Lex Friedman, where I'm like, I find it so attractive when someone's intelligent, like I genuinely do.
Thanks, Rhona.
And that for me as well is really important, because for me, I'm like, you're a great role model. And Huberman, you know, where I'm like, you guys, but also you can see that they embody the degree of masculinity, but they also respect women. Do you see what I mean? Because you can tell the conversations they have, the conduct they have, the nuanced way of thinking, you know. And I think, you know, there are men out there, and like you said, Joe Rogan, you know, like he can have very balanced conversations.
You know, he's in a very fulfilled relationship by the looks of it as well.
And Huberman and Lex Friedman not, but you know, they talk about that. So I think it's important. And actually, I didn't tell you about this, Pay, but I got trolled. I've actually been trolled recently. As you know, I get trolled by some male dentists recently.
What would they say?
It's really weird, but the way that they're behaving is that they're annoyed and angry about my success. And I'll tell you the context off later. But I don't get it, because I'm like, why am I threatening you? Or why are you trying to compete with me? Or why are you trying to put me down? And the ages they are about like 22 to 25. And I'm like, I don't get it. I just don't get it. Like, why the need to attack me? Do you see what I mean? And again, I'm like, is it because of the younger generation? Is it because they don't understand? There's some kind of like undertone of hate or wanting to see me fall.
Rhona, you're quite a public person, so it's you're out there. You're not afraid to say things, and you're not afraid to present your work, and you also, you're prominent in the field that people didn't think you could be prominent in. So that will always attract, because you're different, that will always attract people that's probably pure envy, and they'll probably always, and men
it's a bit
probably
easy to call it envy, though. Yeah, it's a bit easy to call it envy. I mean, I think Rhona, the thing about her is she knows social media better than us.
Yeah.
No, Martha's pretty good.
Not as good as you.
Better than most, right? She knows social media, so she knows part of social media is trolling.
Yeah.
But what I've noticed with her more recently, before she used to complain about it a lot, now she wants to understand it.
She's riding it away.
She wants to know. No, she wants to know.
Oh, yeah.
She wants to understand it. And I don't think it any longer comes from the same place of hurt that it used to come from before. Now you just want to understand.
But I have empathy and nuanced thinking, right? Because with the stabbing, it was such a heinous act, right? With the guy like stabbing the 15-year-old girl in Croydon. But also my nuanced part of the brain is like, what have we done to fail these people? Like, why are people committing these acts? Because again, like another off-topic thing, but like when people go to prison, right? People are like, they're criminals, they deserve to die. People become criminals because they've had some trauma or something awful happen to them. And unless we address that, people will keep going to prison and they get released, and by the way, 90% or some crazy statistic end up going back to prison for the same crime, because you don't get back to the root cause of the problem, right? So that's why I said to you, punishment is an interesting one, right? Because there's, on one hand, a little bit of fear keeps you on the straight and narrow and just like, focus on what you're doing. On the other hand, it can just create a sense of...
I guess there's a correlation between mental health, to the space to be able to say stuff without being punished for it. Because I don't know what these people said to you, but it was probably not very nice, right? So it's online bullying essentially. In the US, you have guns, you have them available, and you have mental health issues, and you have more shootings than ever before, right? You have more stabbings than ever before here. And so I think there is something happening. I don't know what it is, not that smart, but there is something happening that we're not only failing men, we're failing
society
as a society in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's sad, because there's just so much more available and so much more. And
there's the crisis with the number of people being prescribed antidepressants and how that takes empathy out of you. Yeah, and
but for example, if you correlate that with obesity numbers, the obesity, even though the knowledge about, you could argue that the available knowledge about health, fitness, wellness, so much more than ever before. Yeah. Yet, for children, so many more opportunities. Still, even the underprivileged children, they have more opportunities than the underprivileged children back in I don't know how many years ago, right? So, but I don't remember exactly, so I don't want to misquote it, but the obesity rates amongst children in the US were absolutely shocking. Same in the UK. So, and we have so much more available to us, so many more resources to help these people.
Yeah, but also to damage. them.
But it's easier to.
The phone itself is at the end of the day an addictive. Mechanism.
100%.
And obesity, a lot of it is to do with addiction.
Yeah, but then obesity has links with depression. That was my point, right? Of course, yeah. So you can see there is a correlation between that too. And then it's just, I don't know what's happening, but I think something really has to change on a systemic level.
For sure.
You quoted numbers, or you said 700,000
a year.
Humans or guys. Humans killed themselves. And I always think about this sort of numbers that, what's the number of people who got close to it? Probably 1,000 times that.
Oh, yeah.
But
let me ask you a question. Do you know anyone who got close to it?
Sure.
Do you know anyone who got close to it? I do. I know. Anyone asks this question, everyone knows someone.
I know several who actually did it. But
especially in dentistry.
in dentistry,
as you know,
it's huge.
it's because it's the highest suicide rate. So we know, Payman and I know people. We could name probably like 5 people that we know killed themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the actual reason?
We don't know.
This is the thing. Like, this is why we started this whole podcast. We delved into it with my therapist. I brought her on, and as Payman was saying, like, you got, like brain surgeons and heart surgeons, and my dad had traumatic time delivering babies that don't survive sometimes. Like, there's a lot of stress. Why dentists? And like, we try to hone in on it, but obviously some of the reasons are the patient's awake. So some surgeons, for example, the patient's on a table, but you've got patients giving you feedback, pain, stress, tiny field to work in. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's all these accumulative effects. And quite interestingly, some dentists, I don't know if you knew this, Payment, but I know too, they commit suicide in their surgery, which I think must mean something,
Well, there's access to things in the surgery that there is, but I mean, it's a very isolating job.
Yeah.
So it's not like a brain surgeon
Community.
works in a massive hospital, right? Whereas dentists work sometimes in one room
All day.
But it's not a new thing.
You have a dentist in the family. My uncle is actually was a dentist in a long retired.
It's been true for 100 years, which is the crazy thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the mercury.
Well, listen, we're probably going to have to bring you on for like episode 2. But I want to just ask you as well, what would you say to people that are struggling if they could do like 3 easy things to help them with regards to fitness and mental health, kind of takeaway?
I think if they struggle with mental health, first and foremost, seek professional advice, right?
Yeah.
So never underestimate someone else who's trained to help you.
Yeah.
That's number 1. When it comes to other tools such as fitness and health and community, just sign up for something and just commit to it.
Yeah.
So make a deal with yourself, whatever motivates you. It's really always hard to answer a question that's very general, especially when it comes to that, because I really like the sort of personal approach to say a client or but if there is mental health issues or people don't feel well, it's probably somewhere where there is a community where you can meet new people, where you can meet like-minded people, probably as well, right? And then if you on a very basic level, take one step at a time. Don't try and change everything at the same time, because if you do, you'll fail, and most people do. So just do one thing, establish a habit, and then so step by step. So really, it's consistency and understanding what the issue is, or at least having a brief understanding of, okay, this is wrong. I have to do something about it. So number 1, establish there's an issue. Number 2, be consistent in your approach that you do. But then again, we could probably discuss how can I be consistent, etc. So I think the professional help is always going to be number 1.
I think the other thing is that we discussed, or like on an ending note, is about the importance of like neuroplasticity as well.
What does it mean?
So again, according to this neuroscientist, so like our brains are always malleable to change. The neuroplasticity is that we absorb and our minds change according to our environment, the people that we're in, etc. Now it really drastically slows down at, I think, 25, and what happens is then it's almost like Play-Doh. So before then you can mold it. After then it's a bit hard and crusty, the Play-Doh. It's just a lot harder to deal with. But again,
there's I'll interrupt you here, but
go ahead.
It's funny because in July I went to Los Angeles for a conference, which is sort of Idea World Fitness, and there's a lot of brilliant minds presenting. And one of the workshops was exactly on that.
Yeah.
And there's an actual method of training that, right? So you have to connect a few different things. So you have to give a person a cognitive task.
Yeah.
An auditory/verbal cue, and then also a physical task. And it all has to be performed at the same time.
So can you give an example?
So, for example, you have a clock, right?
Yeah.
As they call in the US, the military clock, so 24. And you would say, and then you have the quadrant lunges. So you go lunges in different directions. So you tell them the time. So they have to think about the time, and they have to step towards the time and say their favorite color or whatever. So it's a few different things that your brain has to multitask essentially at the same time, right? So your body has to do something, your brain has to do something, your voice has to do something, and that is proven to generate new brain cells, which is so, and to establish new connections in your neural
so
pathways.
neurogenesis.
But then what do you get from that? It's enhanced
okay. Number one, it's you take care of your brain health, right? Which, as you guys probably know, amongst women, so dementia, Alzheimer's disease, these are the I think the largest cause of death in the UK, at least. If I might be wrong here, but I looked at it. But essentially taking care of your brain and helping the brain to stay vital for longer. Oh. So if you think about it, you can even reverse or stop dementia or Alzheimer's disease if you do it correctly and for a long time, right? And trust me, if you do it for 5 minutes a day, I did it in that thing. At some point, you're like, "Whoa, what's going on?"
It's a great tip.
It's actually because your brain burns so much of your energy that after a few minutes you're like, "Oh God, like I'm fried," right? But you just like when a muscle, you adapt. You go.
Muscle memory. Yeah. No, that's a great tip.
Are we allowed to ask you how much it costs for you to be your private trainer?
Payment wants you now, Artur.
I'm not taking on any more clients at the moment because I'm busy.
Well, how much do your existing clients pay?
Around, not that much. That's probably going to give me enough. No, I don't want to discuss this here, but we can talk about it
afterwards.
We can talk about it. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Artur. It's been amazing, so insightful. Really appreciate you coming.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for coming. It's been brilliant.
Thank you so much.